Can Spawn maintain control, or is he doomed to hell? I discuss this and more on today's episode. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today I want to talk about a comic series that I've been exploring, one that focuses on demons and hell and corrupt police officers and such. I am referring to Spawn Compendium 1, a specific focus on issues 41 through 50 by Todd McFarlane, which was originally published in 1992. I've talked about Todd McFarlane on this channel before, so again, I don't need to go into that great of detail. He's well known in the comic book industry for his art and his writing. He's the president of Image Comics, and he created Spawn, which became a media juggernaut, and he's a pretty solid writer who I am enjoying. Don't need to go into detail about that, but without further ado, let's talk about issues 41 through 50. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and I will move on from there. So issues 41 through 50 start with Cygor, the cybernetic gorilla that we met in issues 31 through 40, rampaging across the countryside, trying to make its way to New York City, saving children in the process. A Spawn, who is still being held prisoner by the curse, and he's eventually freed by his costume, which helps him beat up the curse. Rather than being, hurt by Spawn, the curse just decides to blow up his lab, but Spawn is able to get free in time. Meanwhile, Sam and Twitch are still investigating Chief Banks, who has connections to Wen, who originally ordered Spawn to die. Sam and Twitch get fired by Chief Banks because the Internal Affairs is no longer investigating him, and they go off and give their information, give their evidence to a journalist who promises to publish it, but Agent Wen gets wind of this and decides to remove all connections to him from the evidence and the story that's being written, and he essentially betrays Banks. Banks falls out of popularity, is about to get fired and arrested when he decides to just kill himself, which is unfortunate. And Sam and Twitch are unhappy because only Banks seems to have gone down with this, even though the story was much larger. Meanwhile, a bunch of creatures of the night begin to focus on Spawn as he regenerates, and he seems to be born anew, but he has less control over his costume. And meanwhile, while this is all happening, a vengeful angel who's upset that Spawn seemingly corrupted Angela earlier, now wants Spawn dead, and they have a big old fight, which Spawn manages to win, although he doesn't manage to kill the vengeful angel who was trying to hurt him. But the beast of the night, especially the evil beast, managed to help him fight off this vengeful angel. And while all of that's happening, a bunch of the mafia are killing off their loose ends who might be able to sell them out. And we learn more about Trimmer, who has a connection to the mafia boss Vito. Trimmer used to be is like the brother of Overkill or something like that, and he wants to confront Vito, and he seeks out help from Spawn, who Vito seemingly knows about Spawn's old family, or knows their names enough to say something about that, which Spawn tracks down Vito and makes him promise not to do anything about that, threatening his life, and also hurting one of Trimmer's family members in the process, which Trimmer is unhappy about, but doesn't seem to do anything about, at least in these issues. And then we also see that Terry has begun blacking out for unknown reasons. He goes to the hospital, but doesn't tell Wanda about it, and then later he's involved in a car accident, which gets him sent to the hospital again, and it's there that we find out that Terry has cancer, brain cancer specifically, and he only has a couple months to live. And meanwhile, Spawn's costume is out of control. It begins absorbing worms and other things like that, and putting Spawn in even more danger. Eventually, because of Terry or Wanda's mother or something like that, Spawn finds out that Terry is dying, visits him in the hospital, but doesn't really want to do anything because it might give him a chance to be with Wanda again. He's still very adamant about that. Spawn eventually returns because he promises, he made a promise to Wanda until death do you part, and he's kind of not really dead, and neither is Wanda, so he feels he has an obligation to help her with this, and so he uses the last of his energy to heal Terry, which the doctors regard as a miracle because there's no more cancer inside of him, apparently. Unfortunately, this sends Spawn to hell, which is pretty spectacular. And an amazing, issue number 50 is amazing. Not only the reasoning behind Spawn helping Terry and Wanda, but also him going to hell and fighting a whole bunch of demons using an extra amount of his power. And especially because he went to hell in his Spawn form, he is now Spawn in that form, which I think might be a way to sort of give him the powers without really taking it away if he ever gets out of hell, but I'm not 100% sure. And as the story comes to a close, we see Malebolgia scheming again, saying that all of this was done in accordance with the plan, that Spawn has gained new powers and is one step further to sort of helping Hell during the Armageddon times, and that's where the story ends there. In terms of analysis, there is a lot worth talking about with issues 41 through 50. One of the main themes that McFarlane is touching about, and really has sort of been the underlying sort of theme throughout the entire series thus far, is that of control. Spawn is losing control of his powers, and especially his life. Especially at the end, he dies. He uses all of his powers, and he is sent back to hell. And because he has been losing control of his powers, he is losing control of his ability to really fight anything and everyone, because everyone is gunning for him. Spawn is in a state where he has to constantly kill to survive. Cagliostro notes that this is a mistake, that it's only leading to bigger problems, but what other choice does he have? He needs to defend himself, and killing these people is one of the few ways that he's going to be able to do that. And not only is it a problem because it creates further problems, but it also creates more demons in Hell's army, which is something that Malebolgia specifically notes. It doesn't matter what Spawn does. If he kills these forces of darkness, they're just going to be sent to hell, and he's going to be given power over them to sort of lead in the end times. Essentially what Spawn notes himself as, what he specifically says, is that he is a magnet of misery. He attracts forces of darkness, he attracts bad people, and it puts him in a constant state of fight or flight, where he's going to constantly have to use his powers, which will only make him weaker down the road. Whether it's Violator, other forms of demons like Tremor, if Tremor is actually a demon, bad people out there like the Clan or something like that, or even just Wen or other people like that. He's gonna have to constantly fight. He isn't capable of really stopping it. His costume is erratic as well. No matter what he tries to make it do, it's regenerating. It's sort of gaining new power, but it has less ability as it's regenerating and whatnot. And Cagliostro even insists that he must take control and master his emotions. He can be headstrong all he wants, but if he doesn't master his power, he's going to die. He's going to become weaker, and he's either going to create further problems for himself, or it's finally going to take its toll and he'll die, or he just won't be able to use his powers anymore and he'll be sent back to hell. So control is the key thing here, but as McFarlane is pointing out, that doesn't really seem possible for Spawn. We want him to take control. We want him to become better. We want him to become the master of his domain, as Seinfeld says. But this isn't that kind of story. This is more of a tragedy than anything else. And Spawn has lost everything, especially his human side, by the time we get to issue 50. He's gone to hell. It doesn't seem possible for him to become better, at least at this point. Maybe it might happen down the road if he's able to sort of reclaim that side, but right now he's reached a very low point, and even though control is key, we've seen what happens when you lose control, and the Reaper finally comes calling. Spawn is sent back to hell, and he has again he has to fight his way through hell, and he's barely doing that as well. So McFarlane is doing a lot of good writing here, especially putting Spawn, as they say, in the shit, in constant strife to really challenge him and hopefully make him a better person, if that's at all possible. McFarlane is continuing to talk about the idea of the good soldier, but what's interesting is all Spawn really knows is duty. Maybe it's because all he knows is duty. That's the only way that he knows how to fight, and that's why he's losing control. It's kind of building off one another, all the same ideas there essentially. So he's been trained for war, so all he does is war. And even in the afterlife, that's all he knows, so that's all he's really going to do. So maybe it's not really possible for Spawn to be as cautious as Cagliostro as others want him to be. It seems like Malebolgia picked the right person to lead his army. He picked the right person to be as insane and as unstable as possible. And that's why we end up with this kind of tragedy here. Body horror is another feature of this set of issues. It's really again, it's been a part of this entire series, but we especially see it here. There's a lot of grotesque art that you might have seen throughout here. Worms attaching to Spawn's costume. There's the weirdest creatures coming out of the darkness. Spawn is decaying, as we've seen throughout the series. Especially when his body is split in two, it reminded me of I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream by Harlan Ellison, which is largely, about a computer kind of pulling people apart to torture them, and that feels like what Spawn is what's happening to Spawn here. Maybe this is just an elaborate form of hell for Spawn. There is no New York. There is only hell for him. So you get that sense of body horror, of grotesquerie that only adds to the sort of hellish nature of this entire series. I've also been talking about good and evil throughout this entire series so far. Spawn specifically notes that God is evil in this particular volume, especially when Wanda's struggling with the fact that Terry might die. He notes that God is evil. He's been through so much pain, and God is really the source of all this pain because God created Satan, and Satan created these forces of darkness and the Spawn costume, and now he's in the Spawn costume and he's going through pain, and the source back of it is God, and if God wanted it any different, he could possibly make that happen. So at this point, Spawn cannot really see any good. Maybe the reason Spawn is acting the way he is because there is no hope in his eyes. He's dead. He's dealing with a lot of pain. He was betrayed, and so that's the only life that Spawn can see going forward. So of course he's not going to be able to control anything and not going to be able to master his emotions because his time is a time of darkness. And that's really fascinating on McFarlane's part, is that some people cannot see hope because they can only see the darkness. They can only see the evil. And how can you expect someone to sort of believe in something better if all they're experiencing is pain? I will say at times one of the problems is that McFarlane does get self-indulgent, especially there's a issue where Spawn helps a young boy who's being bullied, and that boy talks about comics, and that the boy specifically says, "Oh, isn't Image Comics great?" and whatnot. And given that McFarlane is writing for Image Comics, it does seem a bit self-indulgent. It's if you tell me that Image Comics is great, that's one thing because you're writing for it. I need to be the one to say that Image Comics is great. So it's just a little bit weird and self-indulgent, which you've seen a couple times throughout the series. McFarlane certainly does have a high opinion of himself, which is fair because he's a good writer, but it comes off a bit egotistical when you're reading it. And then I do think sometimes there can be a cycle of what McFarlane is doing, where Spawn loses control, and then someone says that he needs to regain control, and he tries and fails, and then someone says that he needs to take control, and it just seems like a constant loop, and there's no real progress being made on that storyline. And maybe that's because of the episodic nature of Spawn. Eventually it does reach a point where Spawn goes to hell and there's consequences for him losing control, but I can see how it could kind of be repetitive, especially midway through, around issue 30. There doesn't seem to be a lot of progress, but There's certainly more progress in like in a Superman or a Spider-Man comic where most of the things are like baddies of the week, and here there doesn't seem to be a lot of baddies of the week. It's a lot of it is character driven, but it's still an issue that I've noted with the series. So hopefully I might see less of that in future issues, especially if I end up reading Compendium 2. Anyway, those are my thoughts on issues 41 through 50 of Compendium 1. Pretty solid read, and once again, I recommend that you check out this entire series if you're going to do that. In terms of talking about, like issues 1 through 50, what do I think so far? I really like the series. Spawn is an iconic character. The story and the themes that McFarlane is exploring is very good, similar to what's going on in the Berserk series that I've also been exploring. I definitely want to read more. I think in the future I might check out the second compendium, issues 51 through 100. I probably won't be doing what I'm doing here. I'll just probably say like, hey, I read the second compendium, here's what he talks about there, because that seems a lot easier than trying to do like 5 different installments, because it just like I can't focus on anything else. This is all I'm doing, and I do want to really get to more things in my time. So yeah, a lot of fun. Let me know what you have to say in the comments below. If you want to talk about my review, let me know. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this series or this author if they don't already know. Also join the Discord if you want to have further conversations about comics, books, movies, things like that. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and going to hell-based travels. Hopefully you don't end up in hell like Spawn. Farewell.